And with that in mind, I would like to introduce our first master of underwater photography. I'm very, very happy to introduce Catherine Liu, who's an American resident in Singapore. And I was really, really happy to meet Catherine via social media. She shares wonderful imagery from her home waters in Singapore. So Catherine, I think, are we connected now? Can we hear each other?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Catherine. It's nice to meet you. So obviously, I remember when I worked for quite a lot in Singapore a few years ago, and I was told at the time, well, quite a few years ago now, I was told at the time there was no decent diving around Singapore. Tell me how did you discover these wonderful photographic opportunities that you share in Singaporean waters?
Yeah. Let me. Can I share my screen?
Of course. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Please do.
Okay. I think that's a good segue.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thank you for the introduction. So yes, your question. Many people have actually asked me when I tell them I dive in Singapore. They give me this really shocked look, like, really? And this includes Singaporeans too. You can dive here? Oh, what is it like? Is there anything to see? I heard the visibility is really bad too. So I'd say, it's true. The visibility is not good. And if you expect crystal clear waters like in neighboring Tioman or Indonesia, or a guide to hold your hand and show you everything on the dive, then quite frankly, Pulau Hantu is not for you. However, if you set your expectations and are interested in improving your diving skills, your underwater photography, or even your ability to hunt and find your own critters, Pulau Hantu is actually a great training ground, and you'll discover it's actually a haven for mackerel lovers. So let me talk about my journey at Pulau Hantu. I started diving Pulau Hantu in 2015. At that time, I was already a very experienced scuba diver. I had 19 years of experience, and I dove all over the world in world-class destinations. So you may ask me, well, why would someone like me, who can go anywhere, want to choose to dive Pulau Hantu? And I never even heard of or even considered thinking of diving in Singapore at that time, even though I was a huge diver. Well, this is a true story. A little sheep named Sean actually led me there. So see, back in 2015, that was actually my first foray into underwater photography. I actually had no prior photography experience, even on land. And I had taken my inaugural trip to Bali with my new camera. In Bali, I didn't know much about nudie branches either at that time. In Bali, my guide showed me this really cute critter called Sean the sheep. And it was the size of a grain of rice. I had trouble taking photographs, let alone looking at it. But then soon afterwards, after I put it on the computer and then did some Google searching when I came home, I fell in love with this cartoon character. And while I was doing my Google research to learn more about this critter, I stumbled upon a Singaporean's personal blog who had images of Sean the sheep that he photographed in Singapore. And so I contacted the owner of that page, who happens to actually run our SG Underwater Macro page. And I couldn't believe it. He told me Sean the sheep was in our backyard. And then that was my mission to go find it. So that's how I ended up doing my first dive at Hantu, was to find Sean the sheep. And you can see Sean here, pictured here. They're very tiny also in Singapore. This one's about 2 millimeters. So since then, Hantu's been, I've learned a lot about my diving skills, my photography skills, used really Hantu as a training ground or in some ways, my underwater photography studio to perfect my techniques, try new things, do all these things before I go on that big trip. And since then, I've completed 350 dives at Pulau Hantu, as well as some of the other surrounding islands in Singapore. So this is just an orientation of where is Hantu. Actually, many Singaporeans also don't know where it is. So just to orient you, most people know Changi Airport. It's located on the far eastern part of the country. And then the central business district is here. Sentosa Island is here. And in the southern islands, this red star is Pulau Hantu. It's a small island. Pulau Hantu literally means ghost island in Malay. And it is where folklore has it that ancient warriors once dueled to the death. Here's another picture of Pulau Hantu, an aerial view taken by Kelvin Pound. There are two sides of the islands that we typically dive on. This is called the North Jetty, which tends to be a bit deeper. And then this side is the Western Reef. Both are good places to dive. They have different advantages and disadvantages. Across this channel, there is this island called Pulau Bukam, and it is the oil refinery. So it's kind of a contrast. You have this beautiful white, sandy, uninhabited island, and then across the way you have this oil refinery. But it's very beautifully lit at night. All right, and this is the dive boat that I dive off of. It's the Dalton Explorer. They have 3 boats. This is the largest one. Capacity, it holds about 30 divers. It's a nice double-decker boat with a sun deck, tables and chairs, has 2 bathrooms and showers. So that's all equipped with all the diving equipment, and you can rent gear if you need gear. And clearly this photograph was taken prior to COVID, because we're not allowed to have this many people on the boat right now. All right, diving conditions. I think this is probably the most asked questions. People who are curious in diving Hantu, as I mentioned, you do need to be aware that the conditions, the visibility is not great. On average, it is about 2 to 3 meters, but it can be as much as 5 meters plus, which I know is not great either. But for us, 5 meters is fantastic. There can be currents. It is really dependent on the moons and tides. The depth, it varies depending on whether you're on the shallow western side. So you would typically, on the western side, we call the training ground. And typically, I think the maximum depth is like 14 meters, but typically you're diving at 9 to 11. And the North Jetty side can go all the way up to 25 meters, but we don't go that far, typically maybe maximum 14 meters, because beyond that, there's really nothing, and then you're in the middle of the channel. Temperature-wise, it varies. During the monsoon season, it's cold. I consider it cold, 23 to 25 degrees Celsius. I think those in America and in Europe will find that really balmy and warm, but I'm freezing cold wearing a 5mm wetsuit. And then the rest of the year, it's actually quite warm, 28 to 30 C. A lot of people just wear a rash guard, and it's very, very comfortable. It's a typical muck site. There's very little coral. It's very silty and sandy bottom. We do diving in buddy pairs. And as I mentioned, it's not for everybody, but if you want to try and you want to practice some skills, then this is a great place to do it. And it's right in our backyard. Here's a picture of Hantu on a good day at 5 meters visibility. If you're shooting macro, it's really more than enough visibility. This is actually me. I don't even remember what I'm shooting. Okay, my photography equipment. This is also, I use a variety of cameras, and I use a compact camera, Olympus TG4, all the way to a full frame Nikon D850. Just really depends on my mood or what I want to try. I use diopters, which are, if those are not familiar, wet lenses that you put in front of your housing, which allow for magnification of critters, which can be very, very small at Pulau Hantu. And then lighting. Lighting is really important. I use torch lights, I use strobes, I use colored lights, and I also use a snoot, which I find very useful in isolating the subject from the ugly, mucky background. just a couple of photos of how I set up my macro on my camera. And you can either use, there's no right or wrong. Sometimes I use a dual strobes. Typically, if I've done overseas, if I've done a wide angle dive before, then I might just keep the dual strobes together. Most of the time, I shoot with a single strobe. That is my personal preference. Single strobe with my other strobe detached and on a tripod with my snoot so that I can maneuver that how I want to. We don't have dive guides here holding the snoot for you, so I do everything myself. But I also feel that when I do everything myself, I become better and self-sufficient. So we have a great community of underwater photographers, all levels, as you can see, from all different types of cameras. We have a whole league of compact camera shooters, all the way up to the DSLRs. So people are at all levels of their photography experience, and we all, share lots of information, sightings, etc. So it's a great place to hone your photography skills. And even if you're not a photographer, Pulau Hantu it can be a great place to also improve your diving skills. We have beginners who do their open water here, as well as advanced divers who are diving on twin tanks, and people learning to dive in dry suits. Okay, what can you see in Pulau Hantu? I would say the main attraction are the sea slugs and nudie branches. We have over 100 plus recorded species, and more are being discovered every day. Many of them are seasonal, with the best time to view sea slugs and nudie branches, as well as just critters in general, during the monsoon season, which is December to March, when the water temperature is colder. By far, our most famous sea slug is commonly known as the donut Doto. It was officially recorded in Singapore in 2017. I wasn't the one that spotted it, somebody else did. And now it is become a permanent resident. So people often will go to Bali up in Tulamben to shoot this nudie branch, but it's found right here in our backyard. And this year we had an incredible year of them. One of our dive instructors, Robert, he counted 24 donut dotos in 49 minutes, one dive. So that is a challenge and a record to beat.
Amazing.
We have another type of Doto, and this is also photographed famous overseas. It's called the kissing Doto. Typically, you see the yellow variation in other places, such as Bali. Here we have an unusual variation, which is the pink one. And sometimes during the season, you will actually see both colors. So you have a choice or two different kinds of subjects to shoot. And of course, Sean the sheep, which is my favorite. Always a challenge to shoot because they are so tiny. And again, we have also several different species of Sean sheep here. And they typically are very, very shallow, within 5 meters. And another slug that is very similar to Sean the sheep is, but it's not, because it's also got little eyes, and is actually part of the Stillager family. This one is quite rare. I've only seen it this one time. I know some other people have spotted it throughout the years, but it is very, very uncommon. We also have another species of Stillager, which occurs in the green algae blooms when the water is cooler, and that one is much more common. Bornellas. Oh, we have lots of Bornellas, especially again during the monsoon season. These are the 3 types that you're likely to encounter. The one in the middle is called the Bornella anguilla, and you might have seen it also elsewhere overseas. Anguilla means eel. And what's special about this is that it can swim like an eel or snake. So don't be alarmed if one comes right at you while you're photographing. I know some people are sometimes really shocked and spooked when they jump up and they start swimming. Speaking of swimming, play this video. One day we arrived at the jetty and we saw something floating at the surface. So right away I jumped in, and it was this huge sea hare about the size of my hand. And I had no idea that sea hares could swim like this. So it was a really, really interesting encounter. And as you can see from the video, the visibility that day is actually quite clear. You can easily see the jetty pillar. All right, and then damjas, we have different species of damjas. Sometimes they are many of them. So what I noticed about nudie branches is sometimes you start to see one species for a period of 2 weeks, and they're like all over the place. And they're laying eggs or mating, and then all of a sudden they just disappear. So they're very seasonal, and they come in waves. This is another damja. This is a very special one. We call it Sunny. It's nicknamed because these circular areas on its body, they look like eggs. It's also called the fried egg nudie. So it's like sunny side up eggs. So that's the name for it. Although it doesn't really like the sun because it tends to be nocturnal when we spot this. And again, as I mentioned, it's quite rare. We don't see it every year. And then Pikachu, Theracosceras. We also have a couple different species here. This is the more common one. Gymnodoras. Now this is an interesting nudie branch. If you are a nudie branch and you see these orange polka dots, you better run and run fast, because these guys are quite large and fast, and they can catch and swallow a whole nudie branch the same size as itself. And it's amazing if you watch them, how quickly they can stun their prey, and then within minutes they consume the entire victim. Camouflage. One of the things when I'm diving Hantu, over the years, I've become very good at learning the food sources of different species of nudie branches. And you will find that most of the time, if you understand their behavior and what their food source is, you have a higher chance of locating the nudie branch. So in this case, this is actually the nudie branch here. It's in a group of sun corals. It actually feeds on the sun coral. And you can see just how well camouflaged it is. It looks just like its environment. You know, over here, it's what it looks like when it's crawling on the sand. And then Genelus. Genelus, very photographic subject, also an overseas favorite. Again, we not so rare. From time to time, we will bump into Genelus. And then during my time diving Hantu, I've been very proud to have a couple first times recordings of nudie branches in the Singapore waters. So I have 2 of them. This one, again, not a beauty shot, but it was the first time it was recorded here. It's a Polycera. It's called a tiger Polycera. It's very, very small. It's about 2 millimeters. And then the second one that I found was a Giris, and actually this one wasn't that small. It was probably about 5 millimeters, but it looked like a piece of dirt when I saw it, and I almost didn't shoot it. But as we always say, just shoot it, and then look and delete later. Okay, I'm going to switch gears, talk about some of the other marine life. Each reef has a variety of fish. Some of these are not uncommon, but they make for great subjects to practice creative shots. So here we have a whip goby found everywhere. It did a color bouquet, and then a juvenile sweet lip. Just then practiced a slow motion blur on this sweet lip. We also have the master of camouflage. I'm not sure how many of you can recognize what this is. It's a frogfish. Here's the eye, here's the mouth, here's the foot. I am terrible at finding them. This one happened to be at the bottom of the descent line where they tie the rope. And we have different colors. We have black ones, we have yellow ones. If you happen to be diving Hantu and you see a guy with these bright blue shorts, follow him. He is the frogfish whisperer and seems to always be encountering the frogfish. But I am terrible at finding them for whatever reason. This was a big find for me this year. This is a very popular subject also overseas. I've seen it in Lembeh in Philippines. It's called the tiger goby. And I was so thrilled to actually find this on our Western Reef, which tends to be more shallow. I've never seen a photograph of it before. I actually thought maybe it was a new record, but it's not. And but it is almost identical to the species overseas, other than its fin ray structure. But otherwise it looks the same and behaves similarly to the ones you might see overseas. Seahorses. We have many seahorses. They are quite shy here. They really don't like their photograph taken. I'm not sure why. They tend to be very shallow, around 6 meters, and they hang around. We actually have some tires that have been thrown over, or artificial reefs, and that they often like to hang around the tires. But we have yellow, we have white, and we have brown seahorses. Shrimp, a wide variety of shrimp. This is the Tosioma shrimp, makes for a very colorful subject. This one actually, I think, is also pregnant with eggs. And we have skeleton shrimp too, pink skeleton shrimps, white ones, yellow ones, and probably the most famous shrimp that we have, which I've yet to see, the most famous shrimp, we also have the tiger shrimp. It's one of those critters on the macro photographer's wish list. They're here in our backyard also, usually in shallow rubble. My fellow diver, Destine, this is her photo. I have yet to see one, but I continue to search for them. And then probably the big find for this year, this was a new record for Pulau Hantu, and was the blue ring octopus. I have not seen the blue ring octopus at Pulau Hantu, but we have many species of octopus, the coconut octopus. And Robert Tan here was literally descending on his dive and saw this strange rock, and then discovered it was no ordinary rock when he saw those blue rings, and just absolutely beautiful. So I'm hoping one day I will see one for myself on my own reef. Sharks. Okay, we also have sharks for those who like big stuff. We do occasionally see them. We have black tips, nurse sharks, bamboo sharks, photographed here. Are a couple of bamboo sharks. The one on the left is a juvenile. I saw this a few years ago. It's so small. It was the length of my palm, about 6 inches. Wow. And there were these other fish that were, I have a video, they were surrounding it, and they were, I think, harassing it a bit. Must have just been born. And then one of the night dives encountered a adult bamboo shark hunting around. It's probably about a meter plus. We don't have really huge sharks here, but they are around. And then behavior. We have, it's always amazing to see life begin and end in Hantu. So these on the left are whip coral goby eggs. You can see the little eyes. And then on the right here, this was actually taken last week at the jetty pillar in about 4 meters of water. The entire jetty column was filled with thousands of these sergeant major eggs. So it was quite a sight to see, and some of them are already hatching. You can see the little fry swimming around the egg casings. And this year, probably the most amazing experience that I captured, and it's my version of my octopus teacher Hantu style, was getting to know this octopus. She was living in a discarded jar that was on the seafloor, and this was back in February. You could see she's barricaded herself in this jar, and then I can't remember if I noticed this. I believe I did not see the eggs until I came home and viewed the pictures on my computer, and I noticed that she had just laid some eggs. So then I followed her journey, and then 7 weeks later, this is what happened. So you can see her string of pearls and a close-up of them. They're all about full term, ready to hatch. Probably was going to hatch within the following week. Unfortunately, since the boat doesn't go out every day, I didn't actually get to see them hatch. But one of my fellow divers who went the following week found her in her bottle still. No eggs. All the eggs had been hatched and gone. No trace of any eggs, eggshells, anything. But she was in her jar, incredibly weak, and basically. Her life mission accomplished, and she was just slowly dying, which is a bit sad, but that's life. That is the cycle of life. And then awards and recognition. Very proud that a couple of my images that were taken in Singapore won awards internationally in 2017. And this was, again, I was new to photography. I took this image of a conch and it won first place in the Singapore Nature Photographer of the Year competition. I was super, super excited as the start of my photographic journey. Here I am at the award ceremony with our minister, Desmond Lee and Sungai Buloh. And it's also been featured in other international photo competitions. So you don't have to go to an exotic location or look for trendy subjects in order to win a competition. And then some of my creative, my Nudie Art Series, which I call it, was also photographed in Singapore. And as I mentioned, one of the benefits of diving locally is that I can spend the entire dive shooting one critter. I'm not in a rush, and if I mess up, I just come back the next week and try it again. So, as I mentioned, it's a great training and learning ground. Okay, and lastly, if you'd like to know more about what we see in Pulau Hantu and some of the other local dive sites, please join our Facebook group, SG Underwater Macro Photographers. Again, as I mentioned, people all different levels. We like to share what we see, even give each other tips. And but please only post photographs that are from Singapore, not from other destinations. And thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and it was informative and makes you want to dive Pulau Hantu.
It certainly does, Catherine. Thank you very much for sharing those beautiful images and a really, really good example of, this is your backyard. This is where you can go and dive and get to know the place. And I think this is a really good topic to explore when we're talking about mastering underwater photography, because diving in our own backyards means that we can actually take the time. So how often do you dive there, Catherine? Weekly? Is it every week or?
So in the beginning, I was diving weekly. So about let's say the 350 dives. Since then, about 65 dives a year. So I was diving weekly in the beginning because I would get so excited. I'd read about something and I want to go try it. I go plan it during the week, and then I just rush out there. And then it's fun. We dive with other like-minded photographers who are also doing the same things. Probably now a little bit less, just because of the whole COVID situation. We have fewer slots available on the boat, but I definitely get out there twice a month now. Still. Fantastic.
And I think that's another, obviously we live in strange times where we're not traveling as much, and this is a really good your images are a wonderful example of how, making the most of what we have close to home and being creative and using technique, using our technique is a really good example of it. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you.
I think we could keep talking for quite a long time, but I'm afraid the schedule must move on. So it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. I look forward to meeting up with you and hopefully diving at Pulau Hantu at some point in the future.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Bye.
And thank you to the audience. Bye. Bye.
Happy National Day.
Happy National Day.